What's up, y'all? I'm your host, Gloria, and you are listening to another episode of Good Vibes and Deep Dives, where we connect and reflect every week. And of course, shout out to you for tuning in to me. So, I was out for 2 weeks, didn't tell anybody, so that's on me. But you know what? We needed it. Things were getting a little hectic, and rather than stress myself out more, I said, you know what? We're going to put a pause on things and refocus. So I'm here, I'm back, and we're making things happen. So, yeah, I guess in terms of being active, I can give you all a 5K update. So, remember last time I missed a turn somewhere, so my time was off, and I was just discombobulated because I was late. So, I had to do a redo of that 5K, which I have already completed. And I met my goal. So I'm happy about that. My goal was to be at 45 minutes or less. I hit 44:17, which is good. My next goal is to hit 42 minutes or less. And ultimately, this year is just me trying to get back on track. Last year in May, I had my best time, which is 42:31. So if I can beat that, then I'm in a good place to hit my next goal. So, yeah, let's see. What else can I tell you about? I recently had a family trip. Definitely had my little moments of being overstimulated, but all in all, it was a good trip. Definitely some good quality time. Happy I got to participate and, do things for my family. We've gotten into this habit of biannual trips. So happy to, create these traditions. And for this one, we were able to celebrate my grandma. So, yeah, just happy to be a part of these moments because I think we've worked really hard to get to this space. And so, yeah, shout out to the fam. And with that, I've come to realize we are midway through August and I got to really start getting ready to move. My lease is up at the end of the month. So I have to go ahead and pack it up and get out. So, yeah, it's truly the end of an era. And the closer it gets, the more it becomes a little bittersweet. Like, wow, I'm really moving on to a new chapter of my life. It's a little sad. Definitely going to miss, some of the spaces I've created up here, but it's for the better. And it's not like I'm moving across the world. I definitely have opportunities to come back and I have intentions to come back from time to time. So, yeah, I think that's it. Oh, let's acknowledge this. Friends, we made it to episode 10. Is that not crazy? I know it's been, a long road to get here with the pauses and, the changes and format, but I'm really proud of us and it's only up for here. We made it to the double digits. So shout out to us. All right. So I think that's pretty much it. Let's move on and actually get started with today's show. So, as always, I got a little grievance of the week. I got something to complain about. And this time, I just want to talk about eczema. And, I probably should do a little more research. I get it in general. I am a part of that afflicted community. And I just don't understand why my skin would betray me like this. Like, what is the evolutionary purpose of eczema? Why do we have this? Why are we afflicted by this? Because this flakiness, I'm not a fan of, and it's just something I have to constantly monitor. I don't even think there's like a permanent solution to eczema. I think you just learn how to deal with it. And I'm sick and tired of it. It's aggravating. I'm itching and I'm not a fan. So yeah, I just had to get that out because what am I going to do about it? Nothing. I just got to deal with it. Moving along, let's get into our friendly reminder. And I think this one's a good one. And that is don't let today ruin tomorrow. It's so easy to get caught up in the day's shenanigans and to carry that with you into the next day, especially if it's something deep and, ongoing. But the reality is, we can always acknowledge things without allowing it to fester. You don't want to walk around like Eeyore and have this cloud with you for days and months. Things happen. A lot of those things are unfortunate and they're bigger than us, but we can, figure out how to behave accordingly and again, acknowledge what's happening without letting it ruin what we have going on. It's the little, habit of figuring out how to be objective. So, yeah, saying all that to say, don't let today ruin tomorrow. All right, so that's that on that. And now we can get into the deep dive. So, in the spirit of locking back in, I thought it would be great to spend some time on self improvement. So, what better way to refocus than to talk about the 7 habits of highly effective people? And you know what? I'll be honest, I didn't read the book. However, I did take a class and it was really good. We reviewed the fundamentals, did a couple of exercises, and at some point, I do plan on reading it. But for now, I have some really good takeaways that I thought would be a good refresher for all of us involved. And since it's 7 habits, I'm going to split it up. So I'm going to focus on the first 3 for today's episode, which all deal with independence. That's the category that they're in, according to the book. So let's talk about it. Habit number 1 is choice. And this has to do with how you respond. So being able to respond intentionally and focusing on what's in your realm of control is really where that habit of choice comes in. So you move beyond the thinking of life is happening to you. You're more so looking at things from the perspective of what can I do in this given situation? What can I act on? In order to get into that mindset, I think you have to ask yourself 2 questions. The first would be, how are you responding and reacting? And then the second is, what can you do in that situation? And I know in some cases it may feel like things are so much bigger than you and there's only so much you can do. But the reality is, we always have a choice in how much we engage and also how we think through things. Being able to give yourself a moment to pause and reflect will allow you to be more intentional in the choices that you make. So that would be my biggest takeaway, I think, in order to implement this habit, figuring out how to create almost like a buffer, I would say, between your reactions and the things that are happening around you. Because that little moment, even if it's 5 seconds, may prevent you from missing something or overreacting because you're really giving yourself the space to think through and observe the situation. So, yeah, I may not necessarily be able to control a natural disaster, but I can control what I do with my time in terms of preparation. I can spend that time stressing out, being emotional, or I can give myself 2 minutes to feel whatever I need to feel and then spend the rest, you know, making a list, gathering items, etc., etc. That was a little extreme, but I just needed to at least give an example, right? There's a lot of things that just happen because life's. And so we tend to be on the receiving end of whatever comes out of that. And I think by default, we just victimize ourselves and feel like, okay, this is happening to me. I guess, I'm going to just deal with it accordingly. And I think there's always an opportunity to take a little bit more control and say, okay, this is what's happening, but I know what I want to happen. So let me figure out how I can make happen with the given circumstances. And I think that, position of having a little bit more ownership over the situation and holding yourself accountable on how you participate allows you to really be able to focus on those things that matter most. So, yeah, that is habit number 1, all about your choices. let's move on to habit number 2, which deals with purpose. So, this is deciding where you want to go, what you want to do, and who you want to be. So, think about it like this: why are you doing this? What's the point of all of this? What's your ultimate goal? And I think you can only answer that when you really spend the time thinking through those questions. And in order to do that, I think you should spend the time to create a personal mission statement if you haven't already. More often than not, people think, oh, I know what's important to me. I know why. Especially if you're in a caretaking position, which is cool, but I don't trust my thoughts, and I don't think you should either. They're great, they're informative, maybe even entertaining, but thoughts are also fleeting. So, really spending the time to sit there and boil things down to, what really matters to you, what you want out of life allows you to really drill down what value you're bringing to the world and what is it that you want to get out of things. So, I say create that personal mission statement. It might sound like a piece of homework, but honestly, it's going to benefit you. So do it. I'll give you my personal example. Years ago, started this habit of doing like a retreat for my birthday, and I would reflect on my life, what my goals are, what is it that I'm working towards. And slowly but surely, this eventually turned into a PowerPoint, which I call my life plan and progress. And so I spent the first couple of slides answering these styles of questions. So I answered, what's the meaning of your life? Who are you? What do you want? How can you give value to the world? And by doing that exercise, I was able to create that personal mission statement. And it's a good reminder for me when I'm thinking about my goals and I'm setting myself up, for the things I'm trying to accomplish, because a lot of things sound good. A lot of things sound like they should be important to you just because of family and societal pressures or expectations. But when you really think about what you want, what your goal is, you have a clear and more prescriptive direction, which I think allows you to achieve a higher level of success because it's specific to you and it deals with your own desires, which naturally is going to push you to want to accomplish it more versus setting your life up around, whatever you think you should be doing without spending the time to really think about what you want. So, yeah, a very long winded way of saying spend the time to really think about what your purpose is. What are you dedicating your time to day in and day out? Don't just do things because they're pressing and people are telling you it's important. Really think about what is it that you want to spend your time on, what you want to focus on, and how to create a life around that. And that can only be done if you spend the time creating that foundation of the personal mission statement. So, yeah, do your homework, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. And then that takes me to our last habit that we're going to talk about today, which is habit number 3, focus. So, this is aligning the time that you spend on things with what your values are. So, they reflect what you want out of life. So, definitely a good segue from habit number 2, purpose. And honestly, I don't really think you can actively do habit number 3 without doing habit number 2. Once you know what you want out of life, what your purpose is, then you can create the separation on what fits in that category and what doesn't. So, how do you bridge this gap together? You take your personal mission statement, you dumb it down in a way that makes sense to you. So, for example, when I did my personal mission statement, I created this system for myself where I look at my life from 5 different perspectives. And that's how I was able to think through what I wanted. So, those 5 things are health. So, that has to do with my physical health, lifestyle, so spirituality, mental health, and how I live my life basically. and engage with the world. So relationships is also in there, friendships and all that type of stuff. Then I have finances. So this has to do, all with financial security. Then moving on to education. So this is beyond traditional academia. What is it that I want to learn in life? What are some of the things I want to check off and say, okay, I did that. I completed that. And then finally, we have career, right? So, what is it that I want in terms of my work goals, career goals? What is it that I want to do? And when I sit down and look at those five different areas, I can jot down the different things that I need to do to be able to make the goals happen in their respective categories. So I take that mindset and I tie it back to my calendar, which I color coordinate. So each of those five categories has a specific color. And then everything I put on my calendar, I categorize with those colors. And that allows me to really think about how I'm spending my time and seeing if whatever I put on the calendar matches with essentially, those value streams, I would say, those different areas that I'm trying to focus on. I want to paint that picture for you because one, I believe organization is important. A lot of people that I know kind of go through stuff however it hits them and then they get a little frantic. So I find that spending that time to organize your thoughts, organize your events, list your priorities helps you manage things better. And then being able to tie that back to the things that you want out of life really helps you stay grounded in the spaces that you want to grow. So that's my little tip on how to really act on being focused, really instilling habit number 3. Make sure you engage in habit number 2 and then organize yourself around those values in the spaces where you're figuring out how you're going to spend your time. And what better way to do that than to be a calendar person? I'm a big fan. I will always promote some type of calendar. So, yeah, those are the 3 habits of independence. And naturally, it made me think about the rules that I had set earlier this year, which were quit, sit, and commit. Quit was about giving yourself permission to quit what wasn't working, right? And limiting your focus on the things that you feel like are the most important, which naturally flows into habit number 3, focus, we just talked about. Then sit was all about staying the course and allowing things to take the time that they need, really being patient and staying on the path. And while there wasn't a direct correlation or, a habit that fit specifically, I feel like the most related was purpose because you're willing to stay the course and deal with whatever comes with that road that you're taking if you truly understand why you're doing it. And then for the last habit, commit, which was about focusing on making the best decision in the moment, naturally fit with habit number 1, which was choice. So I say this all to say, I think it highlights to me my thinking. I'm very much focused on me and what I can do. And so when I think about the next category of interdependence, it, highlights that there's an opportunity for me to think beyond what I can do and also think about how I'm engaging with others and working with others. So that's one little light bulb moment that I had in this exercise or, process. But outside of that, I just think we need good reminders and refreshers on these little habits that really pay off in the long run. So, for the sake of refreshing ourselves really quick, since I said a lot, we covered the first 3 habits of independence, which are choice, purpose, and focus. These are really going to help ground us as we move forward with the other habits of highly effective people. So sit and marinate on that. All right. So that is it for our deep dive. Now it's time for our last segment, super random. These are just different things that popped up that I thought were pretty interesting. So, number 1, I was watching a podcast and I thought it was really interesting how they talked about football players, once they retire or get released from the NFL, tend to be a part of pit crews. And a lot of it boils down to the transferable skills. So, speed, strength, and hand eye coordination are really necessary for that style job, and being able to go from, one sport to another that seem completely, you know, opposite, right? Completely out of each other's realms, but finding that thread that unites them in this skill set, I think is just a good example of how transferable skills really exist anywhere. And it's so easy to think, oh, I can only do this one thing because I've only been doing this one type of job, or I've only had training in this one area. But the reality is, if you really think about things at that fine level of what exactly is that you're working on, you can find opportunity in other spaces that you would have never thought of. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Those transferable skills from athleticism being able to manifest themselves in other careers. Let's see. Let's talk nosebleed position. I was recently in a situation where there was somebody who had a nosebleed, and the person was leaning forward, and immediately my thought was, oh, they should be leaning back. And then I also thought about, when's the last time I had a nosebleed? And thankfully it's been a very long time. I couldn't even tell you. And so in this process, I was like, let me Google it. Do you really lean forward or do you lean back? And come to find out, friends, you're supposed to lean forward, because if you lean back, you could choke on your own blood, which is already crazy. But yeah, so if you're ever in a situation where you find yourself having a nosebleed or someone around you is, make sure they are tilted forward until it stops. All right. And then moving along to my last super random bullet. Somehow, some way, I got into watching 60 Minutes Australia, and it just highlights to me how similar our experiences are, even though we're on other sides of the world. But outside of that, I also thought it was interesting to see how we have different references depending on where you are, right? So I was watching this episode of 60 Minutes, and the lady said something like, "Oh, they were played or they played you like a maestro." And I was like, "Why does that sound so familiar?" And so then it hit me, "Oh, in America we say they played you like a fiddle." And I was like, "Damn, like same concept, right? Same impact on the saying. Basically, somebody's telling you that you're getting played, but the reference point of maestro compared to a fiddle is very regional, because when I think of a maestro, my first thought was actually a piano, but then I realized, oh no, this is a orchestra conductor, right? The people with sticks who be waving their hands and getting the people together, right? So they played you like that. That means that person is in control. But then here, when I think about fiddle, I think about, some man on a country road, leg up on a crate, and just singing a song. And I'm like, huh, what does that say about, our musicality and, what's natural to us, right? Like, I wouldn't think about orchestras in Australia, but that's their reference point. And for us, it's fiddles. And even then, when I had to think about what is a fiddle, I was like, what does a fiddle look like? Is it different from violin? Is it the same thing? And so in my research, those two are interchangeable. Fiddles, violins, the instrument is exactly the same. I think the main thing is how they're played, and I guess how they tighten the strings or something like that. Nonetheless, that's a whole different topic. But I just wanted to highlight how we're basically experiencing the same thing, just with a little local twist. So, yeah, that is that on that. And that is it for today's show. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Make sure you tune in next week as we continue our deep dive into the 7 habits. We'll cover interdependence, which again is all about how we interact with each other. And hopefully you have some good takeaways from this episode and the next. And of course, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. And share these vibes with a friend. For more, you can always find us at goodvibesdeepdives.com. And until next time, bye.